Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Shanae. Today's video is going to be my entire physical TBR. So every book that I currently own on my shelves that I need to read will be shown in this video. I'm going to start with the books that I'm currently working on right now that I would like to hopefully read in this month or next month. So the book I'm currently working on right now is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. This is the last book in the Throne of Glass series. After this, I will be caught up before the new Crescent City book comes out at the end of January. Next up, I am a Sarah J. Maas fan, so I am also a Fourth Wing fan. So I have book 2 in that series that's called Iron Flame. I read Fourth Wing last year, and then I pre-ordered Iron Flame and got it when it came out, but I haven't read it yet. I also have the audiobook for this one. Another sequel I have is Written in Starlight by Isabel Ibanez. I read Woven in Moonlight last year or the year before, and I really liked it, and I thought the covers were really pretty for these books. I just haven't read this one. I need to get around to it. Next is the first graphic novel for the Dune series. I tried reading that series, and I'm sad to say that I gave up on it when I have one book left, one or two. I think I just have one book left. But I am interested in reading the graphic novels. Maybe I'll get a better understanding of the story. I just feel like the series itself was really long and drawn out, but maybe this will be a more enjoyable way to read it. Next is another book I have an audiobook for, so that's why it's on a priority list. So this is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. And then lastly on my priority list is The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart. I have an audiobook for this one as well. Okay, the rest of the books on my physical TBR are on this shelf behind me. So as I go, I'm just gonna pull from these shelves and you'll see them empty and hopefully refill. The first couple are from the Children of Blood and Bone series. So I have Children of Blood and Bone and Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. I knew the plot for this series a while ago, but I don't remember now. I bought these when Barnes & Noble was doing a big sale on hardcovers. I liked the covers and I thought it sounded interesting at the time. Next is Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. I read the first book and this is the prequel. So I read Legends and Lattes last year, so I'm excited to get around to this one. This will probably be added to my priority list soon because I like to prioritize sequels. Next up is an anthology. This is from different authors and it's meant to go along with the Agatha Christie series, the Miss Marple mysteries. I haven't read this or any from that series, but I really liked the cover and I have read And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie and I was interested, so I purchased it. Next up is another series with a multiverse that I'm waiting to catch up on Sarah J. Maas before I start, and that is the Shadow and Bone trilogy by Leigh Bardugo, and then the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. These are all supposed to be in the same world, and I want to read these before I watch the Netflix series. So I have all of those books from those two series. So I have Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, Ruin and Rising, and then I have Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I know she also has another series that's in this universe. I just haven't purchased them yet. I'm stopping myself because I haven't started any of these, so I'm gonna hold off. Next up I have When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. This one sounded really interesting. What I remember from the premise is that one day women turned into dragons, but it wasn't all women. And I think it was the main character's family member turned into a dragon, but other family members didn't. So it's a mystery to figure out why that is. Next up is another series I would be starting, which is Graceling by Kristen Kishore. Then I have Not Good for Maidens by Tori Bovalino. This one's about the goblin market, which I thought was really interesting. And then I have Masters of Death by Olive E. Blake. This would be my first Olive E. Blake. I'm kind of concerned about this one because people who enjoy her books haven't had good things to say about this one, but hopefully since it's my first one, I'll enjoy it. Next up, I have The Space Between Stars by Anne Corlett. This one was a gift from my sister for my birthday one year, and I just haven't gotten around to it. I think the cover is beautiful, and I think it's a sci-fi, so I'm looking forward to this one. Next up, I have A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I really like this edition. I have a couple books in this edition from Barnes & Noble, but I haven't read this one. It's very short. I actually had planned to read it around Christmas time at the end of 2023, but I didn't get around to it. So maybe this will be at the end of 2024. We'll see. Next is another one I need to add to my priority list of sequels. This is The Hunting Moon. This is the sequel for the Illuminaries, I believe it's called. This one is about people who train to fight nightmares in this like dream world forest area. It's really interesting. I really liked it. So I'm excited for this one. Also, I think the covers for this series are beautiful. Next is another gift from my sister. This one was for Christmas. So this is Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. I think this is a King Arthur retelling. This one sounds interesting. Finishing off this top shelf here, I have a couple of classics. So I have a double here from Charles Dickens. So I have A Tale of Two Cities and Great Expectations all in one. This one is very daunting. I bought this one because the cover was really pretty, but I don't know when I will get around to it. Speaking of really thick books, I have The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. That one's really big. I don't know anything about this one. I just know it's a classic and it's really long, so I don't know. Last on that shelf is The Paleontologist by Luc Dumas. Interesting. And this one, I'm trying to remember exactly what it said on the sign at Barnes & Noble that sold me on this. It was something like Jurassic Park meets Night at the Museum with something else, and it just made it sound really interesting, so we'll get around to that one eventually. Okay, I think I have these top books in the correct order. I like to have them in alphabetical order, and I think some of them were mixed around, so maybe this will help me reorganize them. So starting on the next shelf, I have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia for Fairies, or of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This one's like a cozy fantasy about Emily Wilde making an encyclopedia of fairies. This one sounds really interesting to me. Next, I have Dark Places by, I'm not sure if it's Gillian Flynn or Gillian Flynn. I've heard it pronounced both ways, but I have read Sharp Objects and what's the other one called? Gone Girl. And I really enjoyed those. Sharp Objects was really dark. And there's also a show about that one that I started watching and it was really dark, so I had to stop. But I've had this one for a few years because I was interested in her as an author, but I think my reading tastes have changed, so I'm not sure when I will get to this, but I am still interested in reading it. Next up, I have Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. I read The Echo Wife by this author and I really enjoyed that, so I'm excited for this one. Another one to add to my list of sequels that I need to get around to, I have The Fell Heart Huntsman by Chloe Gong. I started with These Violent Delights duology, and then this series is following the same characters, so I'm not going to talk about it too much because I don't want to spoil, but this is the this is the second book in that series, in this series, but there is also a set of short stories as well. And I've read everything up to this point, so hopefully I can get around to this year. Also from Chloe Gong, I have Immortal Longings. I'm not sure if this one is in the same world, but I know all of her books, at least the ones that I own, I'm not sure how much she's written outside of what I own, but they all are retellings of Shakespearean plays, and I know this one is as well, so we'll see if it's within that same world with those characters. Next is another series. This is a series that I was introduced to by Megan on YouTube, and she loves this series. I think it's her favorite. So it is the Theodora Goss series. What is it called? I don't know. This one is called The Sinister Mystery of the Mesmerizing Girl. And then I have to like double check what order they go in. Then there's European Travel for the Monstrous Gentlewoman. And then The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. I think that's the right order, but I'll double check before I read it. This is following a character named Mary Jekyll, who's related to Jekyll from Jekyll and Hyde. And from what I've heard, it has a lot of different characters from like different mystery type stories, all kind of in the same world. So it sounds really interesting. I like retellings like that, as you can tell from me reading Chloe Gong as well. Then I have this edition of Grimm's Fairy Tales by the Brothers Grimm. Next, I have another series. I have The Shadow of the Gods. I think that's the name of this series. So this is the first one. And then the second one, The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. And then the first in a series, this is The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. Next up, I have the only Rachel Harrison book I have not read yet, which is Black Sheep. This is her newest one that she's come out with. I started with Cackle, and then I read Such Big Teeth, and then I just borrowed all of her books from the library and read all of them. And then this one I bought as soon as it came out. Next up, I have The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. I started with her like short fairy tale retellings. It's like a spindle splintered, a mirror mended, something like that. I really like her storytelling. It's really like making fun of itself and self-aware, and I thought it was funny. I think this is going to be a different vibe though. I've heard that this is really beautifully written, so I'm excited for this one. Next up, I have an author that I had to pause buying books from because they just all sound so interesting and the covers are really cool, but I just haven't gotten around to them. So I have My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. This I couldn't resist because it looks like a VHS case and it's set in the 80s, and it sounds so interesting, but I just haven't gotten around to it. Also from Grady Hendrix, I have Horror Store. So this literally just looks like an IKEA catalog. Like even at the beginning of a chapter, it looks like a listing for an IKEA product. But from what I understand, it's about someone stuck in a store that is IKEA or that's like IKEA, and creepy stuff starts happening. And also look at the front and then the back, super creepy. I'm excited for this one. Next up, I have another Isabel Ibanez, Together We Burn. I bought this one because I read the Woven in Moonlight and Written in Starlight, where I read the first one, and I really enjoyed it. So I purchased this one because I recognized her name. I know nothing about it. And then another series that I'll get around to at some point is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This one sounds really interesting, but from what I've heard, it's very, very complicated. So I definitely don't want to be in the middle of a bunch of series when I read this. I want this to be my focus. So I have this one, and then I have The Obelisk Gate, and I have The Stone Sky. Okay, starting on the next shelf, I think this is the first nonfiction I've mentioned. So this is The Good Neighbor, The Life and Work of Fred Rogers by Maxwell L. King. I used to watch was it called The Mr. Rogers Show? I don't know. I used to watch it when I was younger and I really enjoyed it, so I'm interested to read this one eventually. Next up, I have Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. I've heard really good things about this one, not just on BookTube, but also from my coworkers. One in particular is really excited for me to read this one. This is, from what I understand, it's about Ted Bundy's victims, but he is never actually mentioned. And I've heard it's very empowering, so excited about this one. Stop saying you're excited about books. Next, I have Notes on an Execution by Danya Kukufka. I think this one is someone who is about to be executed, and then his life story is told through the lens of different people from his life. This one sounds interesting. Next, I have Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. This is a collection of short stories, and I think they're all horror. They're in like the science fiction kind of category. Next one is another one that's in kind of like a multiverse situation, which I didn't realize until after I bought it. So this is Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. So this is the same author who wrote the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy, I think is what it's called. So I'm going to read that trilogy first because I've heard that it's better to have that kind of knowledge before you go into this. But I've also heard you don't have to do that. So if you wanted to read this one, you could. So that one I don't have physically on my shelves, but I did borrow it from the library. So we'll get there. Next up is one that it was definitely a cover by. This is, I think it's a middle grade. But it's called Snow and Rose by Emily Winfield Martin. It looks like it's about Little Red Riding Hood, maybe Snow White, I don't know. But it's beautiful. It also has beautiful pictures. Let me find them. So I'm excited about this one, and I am a teacher, so if I think my kids will like this, I will also put this in my classroom library once I read it. Next up, I have Darling Girl by Liz Mikowski. This is something to do with Peter Pan. I don't remember. I like to go into my books blind, as you can tell. I feel like a lot of them I don't remember, but that's how I like it. Next is another series. I only have the first two books though. I have Fireborn by Rosario Munda, and I have the second book, Flamefall. I am being petty about buying the third one because the paperback that matches has come out, but as you can see, the author's name goes this direction on these two, but on the third book it goes this direction, so I just haven't bought it yet. But if I really enjoy these, I'll just buy it. It'll be okay, I'll survive. Next up was another cover buy, but I also thought it sounded really interesting. This is The Cat Who Saved Books by Suzuki Natsukawa. This is one I bought just browsing at Bookman's, but from what I remember, it's about a cat who goes to different universes, maybe, to save books. Maybe there's something else involved, I don't know, we'll get there. Next up is another cover by. I really like covers that remind me of something else I'm interested in, so this one looks like a tarot card. This is All Our Hidden Gifts by Caroline O'Donoghue. This is about a girl who finds a tarot deck and how that affects her life, and I think she's in high school maybe. Next up I have Loteria by Cynthia Pelayo. This is a collection of short stories all about the different cards in the Loteria game. If you don't know what this is, it's kind of like bingo, but yeah. Also, this is horror short stories, I believe. Next up, another cover by, because this reminded me of the Blair Witch, the dolls that are in that movie. This is called One Was Lost by Natalie D. Richards. And from what I remember from the synopsis, I think it's like a situation similar to Blair Witch, but I'm gonna stay blind when I read this. Next is another book my sister bought me. I have Devils and Thieves by Jennifer Rush. This one reminds me of like a motorcycle gang, and I think that might be part of the story, but yeah. Then I have Dark and Shallow Lies by Jenny Myers Sane. This is another cover by. I thought the flowers were beautiful. Finishing off the shelf that I'm on, this is a Brandon Sanderson series, Skyward. I bought these because the covers are beautiful, and I did hear good things about it, but I have heard that as the series goes on, it's not as good. So I don't know, I haven't started it. We'll get to it eventually. But I do have Skyward, Starsight, yes. Then I have Cytonic, so that's the first three. And then this one is a few short stories. This is where I've heard that it doesn't hold up because Brandon Sanderson brought in different authors for this, so it's not like the same writing style. This is called Skyward Flight, and it's a collection including Sunreach, Redawn, and Evershore. And then there is another book that's out, but I'm gonna hold off on buying it until I actually read this and see if I enjoy it. Okay, I'm nearing the end of my shelves. So the next book I have is City of Nightmares by Rebecca Schaefer. From From what I've heard, this is similar to the Illuminary series where it has to do with nightmares, but I think you can become your nightmare. So next I'm going to show you all the V.E. Schwab books that I haven't read yet. So I own every book that she's written, I believe, and I've read most of them. These are the ones I haven't read yet. So first I have this duology. So we have Our Dark Duet as the first one, and then This Savage Song. This one I think is similar, is like a Romeo and Juliet kind of situation. And then I have The Near Witch, which is about a witch. Okay, next up is this set of graphic novels. It is the Steel Prince graphic novels by V.E. Schwab. This is in the same world as the Shades of Magic trilogy, which I have read. That's where I started with V.E. Schwab, but I haven't read these yet. My husband just got them for me for Christmas, so this is really exciting. And then something that goes along with that series, again, another multiverse kind of thing. You can tell I'm really interested in that. But the Fragile Threads of Power, this is a different series by V.E. Schwab, but it includes similar characters, it includes the same characters, and it's in that same world. Next is another one that I was interested in, and this one wasn't at Bookman's, this was at another store similar, Changing Hands maybe. This is Let's Explore Diabetes with Owls. This is a collection of essays by David Sedaris, and I think from what I remember, this is a humorous way to talk about serious topics. So next, I just bought this because the cover was so cool. This is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is another classic, but because the cover looks so cool, I'm more likely to read this one eventually. Next is another series. So I have the Scythe trilogy by Neil Shusterman. So I have the first book, Scythe, and I have Thunderhead and The Toll. This is a dystopian series where technology has advanced to where people don't die anymore. So then there's these people called scythes, I think. So they're kind of like the Grim Reaper, and they have to decide who dies because the world is becoming overpopulated. Then I have Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. I think this is probably considered a classic at this point, but this is Shel Silverstein's poetry. I think I read this when I was younger, but it's on my to-read shelf because I don't remember anything about it. Okay, these are the last of the ones that I actually own. So another cool horror cover. This is Dracula by, who is it? Bram Stoker. Again, because the cover is so cool, I am more likely to read it. However, this one is very thick, so we'll see. Then I have The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. The first book I read from this author was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. My edition is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle because I have the UK edition. I really liked that one. This one I've heard is a totally different vibe though. This is a hit or miss for a lot of people, so hopefully I like this one. And the last book that I physically own that I haven't read yet is Educated by Tara Westover. This is another nonfiction. I think total, what did I have, 2 nonfiction? I think I need to work on that. But this one I heard is very hard-hitting, and some of my peers have read this and I've heard good things in as far as storytelling with this one. So we'll get to this one at some point. Okay, lastly, I did want to include the books that I have recently borrowed from the library because I want to hold myself accountable and hopefully actually read them, especially because I borrowed 8 books, and normally when I do that I'll read some of them and then a lot of them just kind of sit around. But I was very fortunate to find a lot of books that I've been interested in that I was able to borrow instead of spending the money on them. So we have Girl Serpent Thorn by Melissa Basherdoust. Yes, Basherdoust, I believe. I don't know anything about this one, but there was a white snake with pink flowers on the cover, so I was really interested. Another one with a serpent on the cover. I have Serpent and Dove. This one is the first in a series, so we'll see if I enjoy this one. Again, I know nothing about it, but it has a snake on the cover. Next, I have The Starless Crown by James Rollins. This is at least a duology at this point. I don't know if there's going to be more, but again, another really pretty cover. I do judge books by their covers, and usually when the cover's pretty, I enjoy it. So, next, I think this is pronounced Bacchanal, I don't know, by Veronica, right? Yeah, Veronica G. Henry. I think this one is witchy, and I really enjoy witchy books as well. Then this one I'm excited but nervous about. I have Mayfly by C.J. Lead. This is a horror novel, and I've heard that it's very graphic. From what I understand, it's about someone who works basically at Disneyland as Elsa, which doesn't sound like it's going to be a horror novel, but I think that's what makes it worse, so we'll see. And then earlier I mentioned how I don't have Kingdom of the Wicked on my shelves. I technically don't because I don't own it, but I do because I borrowed it from the library. I don't know. So this one will be read soon-ish, so then I can read Throne of the Fallen after I read that trilogy anyway. Next, I have The Ravens by Morgan Page. I know nothing about this one, but the cover's pretty. And then last but not least, I have 10,000 Stitches by Olivia Atwater. This is the second book in the Half a Soul series. I read Half a Soul last year and I really enjoyed it. I didn't love the ending because I feel like it kind of took away from a main theme of the story, but we'll move past it because I really did enjoy the book overall. But this is book 2. So, all right, that is all of the books that I currently own or that I physically borrowed from the library. My goal for this year is to read as many of them as possible and stop buying books before I've read them or know that I'm going to enjoy them. I do like to purchase books from authors I've read from in the past, like V.E. Schwab, for example, or Sarah J. Maas. Anything they come out with, I'm just gonna buy them. But other than that, I really want to work on purchasing books just because I enjoy the cover, because while I usually enjoy them, sometimes I don't. So I also have a goal to use the library more. So if there is a book that I'm interested in, I would like to borrow it from there instead of spending the money. And then that way, if I do like it, then I can go ahead and purchase it. And then if I don't, I didn't spend the money. So that is everything. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. So, oh, scary.